before we even want to get into it, we want you to be familiar with the math of the problem. So we're going to ask you, in your packet there is problem 1.1. We're going to ask you to take a few minutes and complete parts A and B of the problem. If you just get through part A, that's okay right now, or even if you don't get through all of part A, that's okay. And while you're doing it, we want you to consider the following questions. What do you think the purpose is of the problem? And what might we expect students to do? So what do you think the purpose is, and what might you expect students to do? So if we could just all take some time to let everybody do the math, and then jot down their ideas, and then we'll give you some time to talk in your groups before we share out large groups.
That would probably be like.
I think everyone's had a chance to kind of talk at their groups about this. So would anyone be willing to share out what your kind of first stab at what you think the purpose of the problem is? What is your thought on what the purpose is?
Well, we thought it was a form of assessment to just get background knowledge of what they know, before really diving into it.
How many of you would agree or disagree with that?
Because I couldn't hear.
And I think
It was hard to hear back there, Jen.
Oh, sorry. Can you repeat louder what you said?
We thought that it was a formative assessment to get background knowledge on what the kids know before diving into the lesson.
Any other thoughts?
Besides doing a formative assessment too, it kind of pushes, it differentiates too, because as you go down the stages, it's getting a little bit more difficult. And they have to do a little bit more analyzing, so it really pushes all the levels of learners in your classroom too.
I think that it helps, it lets you see whether they can start to think about comparing in a quantitative way rather than just it's bigger, it's smaller, it's more, it's less, just being more, you know, and whether if they use fractions or they use percents and ratios, you can then see formative, well, what you have, what background you have.
I just think also too, it's age appropriate that they're doing this at this age level because, you know, they're not gonna be comfortable with it, and that's fine, but let's start here, see how much you know, and, you know, don't get frustrated, let's just build on this. But you know, this is the kind of thing that we could use in math through high school, college, and so on.
What do you think students, what might we expect students to do in this problem? When you give this problem to students and you give them all of these, what do you think students do? Or if you've taught it, what have your students done?
Well, we were saying that, like when I went through to do it myself, like I did the math behind it and checked every one, and my first thought was like, ooh, this would be hard, I would think, for sixth graders to do this, but then we were talking and it's like, well, maybe that's not the point though, it's more so like, what are you thinking when you see this? Do you think it's true? Like, why do you think that? And just kind of getting their thinking started. Like, they don't necessarily have to answer mathematically or back it up with mathematics, but like just getting that initial thinking going.
I think one of the things we do see in sixth grade with these is that, yes, it has fractions in there, but like our kids don't do 2/3 times 450. Our kids say, oh, it's 450, I need 3 groups of it, and so they say it's 3 groups of 150. So you get to see some of those connections that the kids are making, that they aren't thinking about this as multiplying fractions at all, they're thinking about it just, what does a fraction mean?
I know I came up with my kids, they're always looking for the one right answer, and so they're going through and trying to figure out which one is the one right answer, not recognizing that there could be many answers that are correct.
For mine, when they do it, the one about for every, the ratio, one day, actually, it's nice to see them, they tie in prime times, because they start to think about, okay, what's that common factor? Can I simplify that tonight? So there's a tie in there to that unit, so that's why I think it's also formative, bringing forward what you're doing.
So another question before we kind of explain how we've used this and also show you some student work from our students is what misconceptions about teaching, about the teaching of the problem might teachers have? So teachers opening up for the first time and looking at this, what misconceptions do you think teachers would come to with this? Go ahead.
They have, me?
Yeah.
They need to know how to do every one of these, how to grade.
I think expecting mastery. That 1-1 is you know, if they don't have it, oh my gosh, how long are we gonna spend on 1-1? Because they don't, you know, wow, they're not mastering this, how long do we have to spend on this problem? So expecting mastery at 1-1.
Anything else? So again, we don't claim that we know it all or that we've talked to Betty and to see if this is the intent, but from our take on it, how we've used this problem with our students, and many of you have hit exactly on what our thoughts and take is on this, is that this is really to introduce some of the big ideas of the unit. It helps to get the ideas of the unit out on the table. Our kids come to us and they see those for every statements and they're like, they've never seen that language before. They don't know what a ratio is. And so it's really kind of just throwing it out there. There's all these different kinds of comparison statements all in one place. And for them, again, that can be overwhelming, but it's introducing these ideas for them. The point is not to teach them all of the ideas before they do the problem. So again, flawed thinking that they can't do this problem. We haven't taught them anything about ratios yet. They know nothing about ratios. There's no way they're going to be able to have access to this problem. So that's not our intent. We don't see that. The point isn't we don't pre-teach anything before going into this. They see these statements and we have them work with them. And you know, they do a good job even if they don't know what a ratio is at that point. The point is not to then teach them all the ideas after you've done the problem too and you've gone, okay, they don't know ratios, they don't know what this percent meant. So now I better make sure I teach all of this before I go on in the unit because they're not going to be able to handle the next concept. So again, flawed thinking that they have to master everything in this problem before they can move forward. We just don't see it as, again, some kids are going to pick up some new information, but really it's not about making sure they master it before or after this particular lesson. It's problem 1.1. We don't expect every student to answer every part of the problem. So when they get stuck on one, I say, you know what, is there one on here that you'd like to start with? You don't have to start at the top and work your way down. Where can you start? So that way I think there's at least one of those statements allows every kid an entry point into the problem so that they can feel successful with at least tackling one of those statements first. And if they really don't understand another one, you know, skip it. And when we come back to the summary, maybe somebody else from the class can help them with that statement. But we don't expect every part to be done, and we certainly don't expect what they say to be perfect. We're not looking for like these great insights at the beginning. We're looking for really them to get their thoughts and ideas. Like you said, we're not looking for formal multiplication with fractions. We're looking for how can you tackle this problem and see if it's true or false. And again, a formative assessment for us, it helps us to assess what students know and misconceptions they had before we move forward in the unit. So after we've done our summary of this, we really have a good handle on what everyone in the class struggled with, what they didn't. If something came easy to most kids in the class, then I know going forward, you know what, I might not need to spend quite as much time on problem 1.3 because they really seem to have a strong foundation of this work. So it really helps us to assess where kids are coming from, what they remember, what they can apply to new concepts. So a formative assessment.